Yesterday we started talking about data JPA. Before that we talked about JDBC also. In Spring, how it is showing the difference. In Spring Boot, right? Spring versus Spring Boot, when we see lot of configurations by default, Spring is providing and it is making our job simple and easy. Like JDBC in Spring Data JPA, when you add Data JPA dependency, right, with these properties, some default configuration classes are being executed. This configuration classes, from where they will come? From this dependency only. When we add this form dependency, some libraries will be loading into your machine. Yeah, so and in that libraries you will be having some default configuration classes. So when you add this POM file, you will get some libraries into your machine. That libraries will have the default configuration classes. So Spring Data JPA configuration classes, what they do, they will provide you entity manager factory and as well as entity manager also. If you want entity manager factory, it is like a session factory, or entity manager, which is like a session, it can provide them to you. These two beans are default beans that are available. These two beans are default beans that are available. These two beans are default beans. These two are at the rate bean methods. Via at the rate bean methods, they will be automatically created objects. Your IOC will create objects for them and it will make it available within your IOC itself. Within your IOC itself, you can find these classes also. Okay, using by auto wiring this at the rate bean classes, you can implement your DAO class. You can implement your DAO class in case if you want to implement. But the most useful approach or no coding approach is JPA repository approach. Like 37 plus methods they have given here. 37 plus predefined methods has been given in this JPA repository. 35 plus methods has been given in this repository. So when you provide an interface by extending from this JPA repository, just by giving on which table you are doing CRUD operations and what is your primary key type, just if you create one interface, right, what Spring will do, it will provide one implementation for you. How many methods it will implement for you? All that 37 methods will be implemented for you. 37 methods implementation by default Spring will provide. By default Spring will provide. By default Spring will provide all that 37 implementations for you. In case if you want to do your own custom implementation, I don't want this predefined 30 methods. I don't want to go with the JPA repository style. I want to write code. I want to write code. I want to write to database code. In that scenario, as entity manager and entity manager factory is available for you, you can auto wire and do CRUD operations as you required. Yesterday we tried with JPA repository, right? Let me show you with entity manager factory. Entity manager factory. With entity manager factory, I'll show you how you can achieve it. In the same example, right? What I will do, I will create one more class. Side by side, let us have a, where is our example? Spring Data JPA. Okay. Spring Boot JPA. Here, yesterday we created one interface, DAO interface, and we auto wiring the DAO interface into our service class, into student service class. We are just auto wiring the DAO interface and achieving all the CRUD operations. Instead of this interface, right? Let me create my own custom implementation. I don't want to go with the JPA repository style. I want to create my own repository. I want to put some hands on DAO implementation. DAO with the entity manager. Okay, student DAO with the entity manager. I'm writing a class now. I'm writing a class now. This class, as it is a database class, you mention at the rate repository annotation. And immediately what you need to do, you should auto wire the default session factory. The default session factory is what? Entity manager factory. So you can auto wire entity manager factory. You can auto wire entity manager factory. Entity manager factory. So using this entity manager factory, you can do your CRUD operations. What CRUD operations I want? From service, I have requirement of create, same as it is this methods implementation I want to do here. Okay, create, for create save method, for update save method, delete method. I need, for select there is a method called find all, and to know whether the entities exist or not is exist. All the similar methods I want to implement there. How I can do that? First save method. Okay, save method which is there in the default, right? Similar save method I want to provide here. Public student entity I will return, method name save, or any method naming convention that you can do. It's up to you. Okay, save student. Now I want to save it here. How I can save? You can use this factory and get entity manager dot create entity manager. Use this create entity manager method. It will be delivered to you one entity manager object. This entity manager object is like your session object. What it will do for you? It can do CRUD operations for you. You can have entity manager dot create native query, create query, store, detach, find, flush. Okay, don't I have save method, lock, notify, persist? Yeah, great. Persist method. So pass your student object here, and what it is returning, persist is returning void. So don't worry. After save operation, get entity manager dot call get method returns the runtime class of the object. That returns class object is invoked by static synchronizer method representative class. What is the method to get it? Contains detach equals to find. Notify persist is okay. After that, select right, find. Okay, let me use this find method. Find. I don't know the primary key which is created. Let me return it as it is. Return student, maybe pass by reference approach if it use. I may get my ID here. So you can use for update also same save method. Update, use same save method. For delete, entity manager dot removes the given entity from the persistence context. Refresh, remove. Okay. So the method name is remove. You can give it here. Usually from delete we don't expect any return value as it is going to delete, and select one record. Find by ID. If I get one long ID, using this ID itself I want to select it. So entity manager dot find. So you can use find method to get it. Which object I want to return? Student object. Student dot class, and the primary key is your ID. What it returns to you? Student object. So just return it. Find by ID. Find all. find all. So you can use create query method, create query, create native query also you have. So if you want to use pure SQL queries, you can use create native query also. Create query from student. So generally this means select star from student. It will return you list of student objects. It returns to you list of student objects. Create query, then it will give query object. You can call dot get result list. Okay, it will return you list of student objects. So this is how you can provide your own implementation. See, to implement 5 methods itself we took long time. What about other methods? Is exist. There are not many methods that by default providing, right? So if you start implementing them on your own, you need to put some efforts here using entity manager. If you go with the JPA repository, by default that 7 methods are providing to you. Is exist. What is that method from interface we used? Exist by ID. Similar method exist by ID just by giving long ID. So we need to check entity manager dot contains. Check the instance is managed entity instance belongs to the current persistence context. Or find method only. Find only. Find only. Same find method you can use. So you may return boolean value. If record exists, you can return boolean value. Return true. That's it. Okay. Now you can use this entity manager implementation DAO instead of default JPA repository interface, which is default providing default implementation. Here by default, all parent interface methods will import it, and Spring Boot will provide implementation for all methods. All 37 methods will be implemented here. But when you want to implement with your own style, maybe a lot of native queries I want to write, a lot of custom queries I want to write. So I don't want to go with this style. I want to use entity manager style. You can do it here. Or you can achieve the same in again here in JPA repository implementation also using at the red query approaches and all. There are a lot of styles. So the first style is simple JPA repository style, and the second style is entity manager factory style. Now let's auto-wire this entity manager factory DAO into our student. Let me comment this DAO interface, and let me create it. DAO, just name it, just let me rename it as DAO. So now using DAO, I'm calling save method. Is exist by ID method also we have, save we have, exist by ID, find by ID. And didn't we create a find by ID? Find by ID, find by ID, find by ID. It is there. Signature, correct only. Type mismatch cannot convert from our student to optional. Okay. See the student object it is given. No optional we are sending. Find all also giving list of students. What is the one? Find all student is not appearing but all is zero. No argument is required. Okay. So now my service is integrated with the custom implementation, custom implemented DO class. We auto-add with custom implemented DO class. Let's test it. So here in this DAO implementation, right, this is expecting to be auto-wired automatically, but I did not create it. Okay, so observe that. Maybe I'll put here a debug pointer and let me run it in debug mode. Debug as Spring Boot application, hoping that it will auto-wire entity manager factory. Okay, let's test it. Postman, Apex, get method. Let's see get method is functioning or not. Sending request. I think request came to controller. Find all. Execute. Came to entity manager. Execute. Okay. Got a exception. Could not resolve root entity student. Unknown entity exception. Entity is unknown. Right? So student is unknown for you. Student. Create query method saying unknown. Student class is there. From student. Entity student unknown because I'm not able to find the package. Let me restart it in debug mode. User not found. User not found. Find all. User not found exception is our custom exception. Okay. Why this custom exception is executed user not found? Because zero records is it returned? Maybe. We restarted application, right? Data must be deleted and recreated. Select your table and see. History. Student table. Run it. No data found. So fail. Exception is expected only. Exception is expected only. Okay. Then do this. Post it. Where is it? Post. Body. Giving some data. Let's save it. Post method has to be executed here. Create the student. It came to DAO. DAO sending it to entity manager. Using persist method, we saved it. So is this record saved or again did I get exit? Hopefully no exception this time. Uh-huh. Again this time also exception. What is it now? Detached entity passed to persist. Detached entity passed. Just a minute guys. Not found is final. What is the latest exception? Detached object, detached student is detached now. Entity manager factory, using manager, create session, calling persist, then flush do I need to call? Dot or entity manager dot flush, maybe. Let me restart and try. Okay, save. Go ahead, complete it again. Persist to detached entity passed to persist. Take Google help. With entity manager. Entity manager factory. Do we need transactions for this? Entity manager persist method throwing exception. should be the issue. Entity manager dot okay transaction dot commit, and you can take help of JPA repository also. Both combination also you can use for save method repository, for custom methods this class. Send the request again. We got the request. The exception. Why it is why did I detach it? Any guess? Transaction have a persistence issue. Do I need to use persistence context here? At the rate persistence context. Let's check all the approaches. So persistence context is not allowed here. Keeping at the rate transactional, regular transactional dependency. Okay. Let's wait. Post it again. Again exception. Same or same exception. Let me ask ChatGPT also. Make sure that entity is the correct state before calling persist. If it is a new entity, it should be detached. If it's a detached entity, consider reattaching or using merge. Okay. Okay. So merge is gonna help. Let's see. Run it again. Oh, merge is working. Okay. Record got inserted. Select it. Okay. Check the record. Got inserted here. Okay. Now maybe select. You can check. Select all. Select all giving. As we have one record, only one record. Select also working. You can try other two methods also. Okay. Other two methods you can try. I'll write one more method here for simple custom query. Okay, native query I'll write. One more method I'll write. Student record with native query. Find with native query. Okay, I'll use native query. Okay, let me get inside here this object and select operation I'll do here. Entity manager dot create native query can write here. So you can write any query here. Select max of ID from student. Any aggregations you can do. Just I'll print them as I don't have any dependency. Just I'll print query one dot find the first result. It will give max ID. Select some name only if you want to get. Select name only from student. Give it query two dot result. Get single result. String name. If you have name email query 3 q3 dot result set result list. We'll be getting list of results. I don't know whether I get entity directly or not. You can print this list and understand. Okay. So let me call this. Let me call this from controller. A simple test method. Just a test method. Service dot create native query, right? Create. What is it? Okay, we have implemented it in DAO. Let's provide one method from service to access this method, right? Public void test method DAO dot find native query. Yeah, nothing to do with student object. No student. Run it in debug method and call this test method and see how it will execute. Unable to determine the direct without JDBC metadata. Why suddenly this way? Okay, continue. So call test method. The name is test only. Check. Test. Okay. Run it again. Call it. Call came here. Next. Came here. Go next. 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 Exception. No query is registered under the name selected. What? Nothing to register it, right? Nothing to register. Entity manager create native name. Acha. See, wrong method. Native query. Named query means it's again different. Okay. Next. Next. Okay. Query is created and let's execute it. Find first result. Max ID 0. I think a table is dropped and recreated, right? So no records. I think everything would be empty. Name also would be empty. Yeah, it must be null. I believe we get null pointer exception. No result exception. Yeah. Still it's a valid thing. Let's post it. Okay. Create a record, then yeah, save is done. Again call the test. Max ID it will give 1 now. Huh? 0. Record is there, right? Select max of ID. I'm not sure. Name, at least name I got it. Maybe instead of first result, maybe you can use a single result. That might work. Now for name and email also I got a list object. Inside list object, yes, I have data. So any complex query you can write here. Okay, you need to explore little more. Okay, for native queries when you have large joins and all, right? Explore is little more, but this is the way that we do. And sometimes people will do a mistake here that instead of entity manager factory, people used to auto wire the entity manager directly with persistence context. It will create a lot of issues later. Okay, because only one entity manager will be auto-wide everywhere. So if somebody close it right after their operations, it will be closed permanently. So remaining method calls and all, you will get null pointer exception instead of entity manager factory if you auto-wire directly entity manager. Okay, usually like this. In few examples, people will suggest to do this way also, right? Entity manager. I strictly recommend you to don't go with this one. Okay, if you go with this one, you will encounter exceptions. So use entity manager factory rather than entity manager. Okay, yeah. So I think that's it for today. Tomorrow we will see uh, Mongo example and all. Yeah. Any questions? Hello. Persistence context is an annotation that is used on top of entity manager. I think to auto-wire it. Check it. It expresses the dependency on the container. Entity manager. It is associated with the persistence context. Okay. So it is telling to the container that persistence context is required for this one. By default, it will create like your session factory. Yes, I believe this is the global object like your session factory that we create, right? Building session factory. So it is telling that before my entity manager auto wiring, it must telling that I have a dependency of persistence context.